All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back for another weekly DaaS Sales Workshop. I think we only got about five of you in here right now, but let me make sure I leave the waiting room open. I'm sure we'll have some more here joining shortly. Um, but yeah, we're going to dive right into it. And do see a couple of new faces, I believe, on the call. I know, Eddie, specifically, you're newer into a DaaS program, and you're on my calendar tomorrow for our one-on-one kind of fastest path to cash THO kickoff call. So that'll be great. I'm going to cover something here that we're also going to go over on that call. But for anybody newer to the program specifically, or that hasn't been on these workshops in the past, my area of expertise and what these workshops are, specifically the main objective here is all around the sales side of DaaS, right? So the selling side of data as a service, meaning how it's packaged, priced, positioned, overcoming common objections, which I'm actually creating a new tutorial on with a little document as requested by one of you guys in my DMs. I do have a document on like common objections that we see, but I don't actually have like a tutorial. So I'm going to have that recorded by the end of the week and make sure it gets dropped to everybody. I think that'll be really beneficial. But as I was saying, I think early on, and even people that have been in the program for a while, there's a little bit of confusion on how do I pitch this, package it, price it, overcome objections. What should I lead with? Should I lead with the in-market audiences and the intent data, or should I lead with the identity resolution? Things like that. And we're covering that and more on all of these workshops. Now, every week I might have a little bit different of a topic or a script or something like that to cover, and I always open it up for a bit of Q&A as well. So my workshop specifically, guys, just to be very clear, dealing more with the sales side of things. I'm not in the platform building audiences on this call. Office hours workshops is where you want to be for that kind of stuff. I'm not in the platform, working on in with the features and deliverables inside the platform. That's just not my area of expertise. Does that mean I can't go into my platform and build an audience? Hell no, I can, but I'm not the best guy on my team, and I don't do that all day, every day. That's just not my area of the business, and that's not what this workshop is designed for. So I just want to be very, very clear and always set the tone for the objective and what to expect here. So what I'm going to start with is the same thing I pretty much start with every week in these. I like to keep consistent, and this is the resource designed more specifically for and from the objective of this call, the DaaS Sales Workshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go drop this link in the chat for anybody that's new to this workshop or hasn't been on one of my workshops in the past. And then I'm going to go over what is covered in here. So let me go drop that in the chat first and foremost. Make sure, yes, that's to everybody. So that link you guys see in the chat is this document on my screen. I'm going to go over what it's here for and why I drop it in there. So again, I go over this every week because this is all the resources you need to build out your data as a service sales process. Again, I always kind of say this, whether we're starting from scratch and just launching a DaaS or some type of agency, might be more than DaaS. Maybe you do DaaS plus Facebook ads plus email, but whatever. Or if you have an existing agency, this is going to totally help you either build out your sales process or at least some subtle tweaks and things you can do to make it more effective, more efficient. Increase the main metrics that we look for in sales teams, right? The show rates, the close rates, the metrics that matter. So number one on this screen is just the exact sales process on a Google Doc, step 1, 2, 3, 4 that I would recommend building out. My background, for some of you guys that don't know, I co-own another company called the Sales Lab, where basically established companies hire me and my team to come in and revamp their sales process. I find that usually falls in one of four key areas, and sometimes, multiple of these four key areas. But it usually comes down to the talent they have in the business. A lot of people hire friends or family or whatever, not necessarily professional sales reps, right? So the talent, it comes down to the frameworks and the scripts they're using. It comes down to the metrics that matter and the tracking and the accountability behind that. And then I always like to say it comes down to kind of the continued coaching, development, and mentorship of the reps. Are we doing weekly team huddles? Are we doing role plays and call audits with our reps and making sure they're sharper? Things like that. So companies hire me to go in and kind of revamp their sales process, their team, find the gaps in their process, and offer a solution, whether I got to write the script or help them track metrics or set up a new dashboard or whatever that might be. Could be a number of things. So again, I build out sales teams. I was the first Audience Lab sales rep here as we launched our company. Until now, I built a team full-time underneath me, and I just oversee and manage that team. And I also have personally closed approximately $10 million in closed deals on Zoom calls like this in the last few years. So again, I just like to say that so you know that like this isn't coming from just somebody that closed a couple deals or built a sales team or two. I have a pretty extensive overall body of work in the high ticket sales space, and more so around, closing data deals is a big component of that. So again, number one, the sales process that I build out for all of my companies and that I advise my clients to do. Number two is just a tutorial where I go over that document and screen share and show you what that looks like. Or maybe because it was a Google Doc, I kept something in short definition form that I feel people would want me to elaborate or expound upon. So I might have done it here in this tutorial. Number three, as you guys know, anybody that's repetitive on these calls, we are always going to be very transparent. And this document is showing you some of the best creative and the current creative that we're running here at Audience Lab to land new data clients day in and day out. So you'll see 8 or 9 of our different ad campaigns and ad sets. You'll see some of our email messaging that converted best, and we'll show you a few different objectives, right? It might have been warm audience and webinar registration, might have been cold audience. And then we'll show you some of the short form creative and copy we use in our cold outreach. Both, I would say we do primarily cold outreach via email and LinkedIn outreach, but I'm sharing with you some of the copy we've had success with in a couple examples. So number 5 on my screen is, you'll see if you go through number 1, and I'm actually going to talk about this a little more on today's lesson. I recommend a 2-call sales process. So call number 1 in your agency to sell data. Here's the script or the framework for the triage call already built out for you. Again, tried and proven with millions of dollars in data deals. Number 5, this is the script or framework I recommend on your actual sales or demo call. Again, tried and tested and already closed millions and millions in data deals using this framework. Number 6, many of you guys are already aware of and seen this, but a couple of you guys are newer. Maybe you haven't yet. A copy of the authority pitch deck that we recommend you use on some of these sales calls and presentations. Very quickly, nothing in this pitch deck is branded to Audience Lab. So all you do is make a copy, swap out the first slide with your own branding, image, company name, what have you, and then just, a short 12 slide or so pitch deck where you can show your prospects or potential clients, hey, this is how we find your in-market audience. Hey, this is how we then take said audience and loop it into your marketing campaigns, whether that be ads, email, SMS, a combination of any of those, etc. Then from there, we have more slides, showing how we can resolve the identity of the bounce visitors on their websites. We also put in here approximately a half dozen to a dozen different case studies that you guys can leverage and use as you're starting to build out results and clients of your own. So all that's included in that pitch deck. Number 7 is where I focus, and this tutorial is a little more focused on the identity resolution tool, the Super Pixel specifically. And I would say this is most designed for you to be able to, number 1, gauge if a client is a good fit and should I lead or offer the pixels. So there might be times where you're thinking to yourself, hey, I got this client or this prospect. They get a good amount of traffic to their website, I believe, but I'm just really not sure if the pixel is going to be a home run. Well, in this video, and then in the description below, you'll see the link to our pixel forecast calculator, which maybe if I have time, I'll go over a little bit on this call, but it's all covered very well in that tutorial, number 7, where I can show you just by gathering about 4 pieces of data from the client and entering it into that sheet. It's going to give us a very close rough guesstimate at the bottom by how much revenue this particular company is leaving on the table by not utilizing identity resolution technology. So it's a very good tool to really gauge and understand if the pixel is going to be a winner, a good ROI, a home run, whatever verbiage you want to use for a client. And then down below, there's some tips on how you can price this and some standard operating things. Now, I have all kinds of different resources and tutorials on pricing, but this one is specifically to how to utilize this spreadsheet and for the Super Pixel specifically. Now, here is a Google Doc with about 20 or so of my sales calls recording selling data deals, or sometimes it's a first call and I'm moving it forward to the second call. The one thing you'll notice with me that might be a little different on some of these calls, if anybody dives into these, is I try not to actually take the credit card and close deals just on this offer because I'm a co-owner and I want the commissions to go to my reps. So you'll see times where people are trying to pay me and I'll get them right to the finish line and I'll say, hey, everything's all set. I'm going to send you over to Mark to process your payment because I would rather my rep get the commission. So outside of that, you'll see me getting everybody right up to the close, but I do give it to my closer to process because I would rather my closers get the commission and I don't collect them. And I just think that's the right thing to do as a business owner. But anyway, I think what people take away and the best feedback I've got from you clients that have gone through some of these recordings is understanding the terminology, the verbiage, how to really recommend and suggest, the best applications or the best deliverables for the client. And you'll get a little bit of kind of my sales approach and my sales style, whatever you can merge into, into your current sales process and your sales approach, right? And then lastly, I just rolled this out earlier this month, earlier in September. This is just a new updated sales script you could actually use to replace number 5 or maybe combine a little bit of it. Um, Again, every few years, I like to create and write some new scripts based on the trends and intricacies and subtle changes and tweaks I'm seeing in the marketplace. And I would say the biggest one with this new script, as opposed to some of the older ones, is just a little shorter, a little more condensed, concise. And I think that's kind of one of the trends that sales calls have taken in the last couple of years is when you get on a sales call, people don't want the fluff and they don't want to spend 45 minutes to an hour. They just kind of want a clear, concise outline. And we always want to kind of go at it from a perspective of what's in it for me, being the prospect, right? The other person on the other end of the call. Not so much talking about ourselves and our great service and all great stuff, but assessing the gaps and where they're at and what's in it for them, and just keeping it kind of clear, concise, and right to that point. The more we can do that, the more effectiveness I've seen. So I'm going to take a quick little pause here. And before I dive into the rest of today's lesson, I'm just going to give a chance and I'm going to see if there's anything in the chat. But if anybody has any questions on anything I've covered, or they came to this session to ask a specific sales question or something like that, do me a favor and just go type a 1 in the chat and I will call on you and you can, and then you will unmute and we will talk about it. What's the name of your company again? So the company that we're on this call for and the company I'm co-owner of is Audience Lab. I'm not sure if you mentioned my other company, the Sales Lab, which I am co-owner of, and that is, again, a sales agency. It's kind of a two-part company. I talked about the part where we work with businesses. We also have training and development and courses and coaching for people that want to get into high ticket sales and want to go through a proven process without spending 5 or 10 grand, right? So that side of the business, I don't really put a lot of emphasis on, and I'm not your guy to pitch you guys sales training. I can give it to you guys for free if you're on this call. You don't need to pay me to go through that stuff. But again, I do talk to some people that come in my ecosystem and they're just trying to break through into high ticket sales, but they don't have any experience and they've seen out there they got to pay $5,000 or $10,000 for coaching and courses, and I can do it, much more effective and cheaper for them. So that's one side of the business, but my main emphasis within Sales Lab is more working with companies that are bringing me in to kind of do a done for you system to fix the gaps in their sales process and work with their team to get them up to par, up to revenue thresholds, up to KPI, et cetera, et cetera. So as of now, I don't see anybody typing a 1 in the chat, and I don't see any questions outside of the one I just answered for John. Oh, John, you have another one? Great. Go ahead, unmute and ask away before I dive into some more today's lesson.
Yeah. So can you hear me okay?
Yeah, audio's clear, man.
Perfect. All right. So this is my first attempt at DaaS. I've been on the fence forever.
Gotcha.
Anyways, so I've already invested into Audience Lab, and I've got the paying Audience Lab down perfectly. What I don't have is how to make money. What I don't have is how to make money. Now,
Touche.
let me make it very clear. I too, I have a lot. I have a lot of experience in sales, and my
Gotcha.
wife and I just recently purchased a two-way radio business. I'm in the two-way radio business. So what I'd like to do is start with our two-way radio business and learn everything there, get the bot up and going, get everything going. Not the bot, but get it going, get sales going. Right now we have little or no sales going to the website.
Okay.
And that needs to change.
Well, yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
And I have no real plan for that. And I've always done outside sales presentations, international business, stuff like that. And this is, now I'm in the office and it's just so weird.
Gotcha. So, how long and how recently, when did you enroll into the DaaS or Audience Lab program?
Just a few months ago.
Few months ago. See, I don't ever remember having your one-on-one call with me, and it sounds like that might have got skipped. After your onboarding call, you would have received instructions to book a one-on-one call with me, which is basically called the fastest path to cash call. I kind of get a good little overview of what you're trying to accomplish. I sit down with you and kind of put myself in your shoes and say, hey, man, if I'm you and I just enrolled into Audience Lab, and normally these calls happen within their first couple of weeks in the program, right? So yes, we will set it up. But what I do is I kind of sit there and say, hey, if I'm you, this is exactly where I'm focusing my time. This is what I need to get better at. This is the resource I need. And I build you out pretty much an implementation and execution game plan. And then I send you over an email with all the resources to go tackle that. So sounds like that got missed somewhere in your onboarding process, because this was the first time I saw your name. Not to say I remember the name of every client I work with, but I'm pretty damn good when I see somebody's name, whether I've seen them on my call or I've had a call with them. When your name popped up, I thought this is the first time I've engaged with you, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct. So clearly there was it doesn't matter. It's spilt milk. All we have is
It is
today.
now,
So
yeah. So
today
you
going
are
forward,
in, John, just to be clear, you are in our private school community, correct?
I am.
Okay, great. So what I'll do is immediately after this call, I had this happen to one or two people last week. A couple of people here and there just aren't receiving the email sent after their onboarding, or if they do, they're just not going through it and booking the call with me. It's not a large portion, but I don't want to see anybody get missed. So immediately after this call, I'm going to go in school and send you all the information about how to book that with me, the couple videos that you should watch prior. Maybe you don't need to because you've already been in a couple of months, but at least the information at minimum to book with me and get that call in. That'll be a big help. I don't want to do it right here in a group setting, with other people's time. I'd rather just set up with you and I one-on-one if you're cool with that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, great. So, John, I'll make sure you get over, and I got it in my notes here, all that information shortly after the call. Did anyone else have any other questions or anything they want me to cover before I kind of dive into today's lesson and what I had planned? I'll give it 20 seconds and then forever hold your peace. And then I'll still leave time for a Q&A at the end. But I don't see anything. So let me go bring up the right tab. Then I'll get into screen share and we will dive right into it. Again, a couple of you, I think Georgetta and maybe one or two others on the call, you may have seen this before. It might be a little redundant in a sense, but I always go over it with some new twists. And this is something that I totally feel like is really, really relevant to recover every few months, probably quarterly. And I can't remember the last time I specifically covered this in a workshop. Probably not before. I mean, July may be the most recent, but it might even be going back longer than that. So I just want to be sure I go through this because what I want to show you here is also covered in that document that I dropped earlier in the chat, you guys, those sales process number 1 and 2. I cover a little bit of this, but I don't by any means spend a lot of time or do a full lesson on this. But what I want to kind of show you is the sales process and I build out and the different steps along the way and how it can really increase show rates, close rates, how prepared the prospect is for the call, have they gone through information, ways to qualify them better, because I feel like one of the biggest gaps, and actually I just saw this today in one of my other audience lab DaaS agency accounts where we had 5 meetings booked this week. We had 4 no-shows, only 1 show up. And then I looked into their sales process and they didn't build in any of this stuff that I recommended in the tutorial. And that was just kind of another reminder to me, like, all right, let me go over this with my clients again this week. And then I'm going to also want to send him this recording as well, so he can go through it. But again, when it comes to some of the very, very essential, I would say non-negotiable aspects and metrics within a good sales process, we're always tracking how many show rates we get. I mean, how our show rates, how many people show up to calls. We're tracking our close rates. We're tracking our qualified, right? We should be like, let's just say we have 10 calls and 5 of them throughout the day are people either not in the right niche, not the right industry. They don't have the budget. Their business isn't established enough. We don't even make them an offer. Those would be 5 non-qualified prospects, I would say. Let's say the other 5 are all, meet those prerequisites or they are qualified. Now, by getting this data, we can, install extra things in our sales process that can vet out those non-qualified and send them in a different direction. Maybe it's to a free resource. Maybe it's to a masterclass. Maybe it's to a live stream. But if they're not quite at the established or sophisticated level where they're ready to work with you or ready to make an investment, we might want to just send them from some free resources that help them get a little more understanding and maybe help them level up so they are a good fit for you, right? Those are some of the things I'm going to cover here. And basically, oops, I went backwards. And we're going to talk about our micro commitment process. So building your sales process and the power of micro commitment. So really, really quick, I'm not going to go through this in super deep. I'm going to keep this kind of a high level where everybody can just grasp what I'm saying. But this is what I would say is the usual sales method in a majority of businesses and has been for many years, many, many years. This hasn't changed a lot in many companies. Now, mine haven't run this sales process in 4+ years, probably even a little longer. But a typical sales process is, number one, we got to engage and get their attention, right? We might do that by an ad, by content, by email, whatever box 1 is in your business. Maybe it's a combination. As you guys know, some of you, and for you newer, I'll be very clear with our acquisition avenues. So we use 4 primary front end methods to get engagement and get clients to ultimately raise their hand and move to step 2 here, which is the conversation. We run paid ads, we run cold email, we use mutually beneficial partnerships, what I call MBPs, right? You might have a different name for them. You might might call them JVs or referrals or Dream 100, whatever. And in addition to that, we use some organic outreach on multiple platforms with a combination of content and some DM setters. So I would say, again, probably in that order they bring in the most. I would say ads, email, MVPs, and then organic. They probably fall in that order when I go back and look at the numbers. For instance, our ad campaign this week that we were running, when I was looking at the metrics, one specific day of ads, we spent approximately $1,300 that day, 1,300. We booked 22 appointments at an average of, if you do the math, about $52.08 per appointment. And again, that was from one avenue. So one avenue, our paid ads and our $1,300 that day got us 22 bookings. We got more through our email, some through mutually beneficial partnerships, and then some through organic outreach. So again, I'm not expecting everybody to have that. I'm just telling you and being very transparent about what we use. When we first started, we were good at one thing. Then we added on a second, then a third, then a fourth. Our foundation initially, but when we first launched, was organic and mutually beneficial partnerships. Then once we had revenue coming into the business out of profit, we started reinvesting back into our ad campaigns. And then we built out, again, I don't remember the exact trajectory, but we started organic and mutually beneficial partnerships. And then we might have gotten to email and ads, or ads, then email, vice versa. We probably did both those right around the same time. But again, I'm not expecting everybody to have multiple avenues. I think the more avenues of acquisition, the more channels we can use, obviously, the more reps we're going to get and the more appointments we're likely to book. But I think it's really important to get good and consistent at one before I add a second, third, or fourth. So I would just like to say that. So most sales processes, whatever they're doing, one of those four things that we're doing, or something else, right? It could be TV, it could be radio, whatever we do in our business to get people's attention. Then usually we want to drive them to a conversation. And this is usually one of two things in a majority of businesses. Do I use an automated evergreen VSL to kind of pre-qualify and then send them to a sales call? Or do I want to use a triage call, a manual personal call? I highly recommend for almost all of my businesses and business owners to go with a triage call, an actual in-person conversation here. I think it builds better trust and better credibility in the market. And I think it can do a much better job with a human going over a framework than any video or VSL in terms of really, really pre-qualifying and make sure they're a good fit to go to step 3 in this process, which would be your full sales or demo call. And, those usually take up closer to about 45 minutes of an individual's time, whether that's you, the business owner, a sales rep you're paying, what have you. So I like to use the triage. There are a few businesses where I use automated assets and more of a VSL to book them in, but those are usually not high ticket service based businesses. Those are usually more simple services, sometimes physical products. So again, there's always outliers. And I told you the two main avenues for that step 2, the conversation. You can always weigh the pros and cons and which one's a better fit for your business. Only a business owner can make that decision. I can only make recommendations, right? And what I see work. And then lastly, to a sales or a demo call, pretty self-explanatory. We pretty much all host those on Zoom, Google Meets, Teams, whatever, right? Some type of video conferencing software, right? So the problem with that three-step process is when something doesn't work, when we get no-shows, when we get non-qualified, when we get people that aren't ready to move forward, we start thinking all these questions like what you're seeing on my screen, but you can't really track it back to one part of your sales process and say, like, was it the call or the messaging? Did I push too hard or not hard enough? Was the prospect even a good fit? So there's so many variables that when we get to the end, step 3 that I mentioned above, and we get somebody unqualified, or that's a bad fit, or that's not financially pre-qualified and can't actually or won't actually invest, like, we can't go back and say, all right, what do I need to fix? Is it my ad? Is it my content? Is it my email? Is it my triage call? Like, it's very hard to assess and diagnose, which is why we've built out, and we use this in all of our businesses, the 6-step micro commitment process. So in the old process, guys, step 1 doesn't really change. The old one was 3 steps. So in that one, those steps are number 1, 3, and 6 on my screen, which means the new steps that we use in our sales processes and for damn near almost every client I work with is steps 2, 4, and 5. And I'm going to go through and explain them and then tell you how they help you track things back to what needs to be tweaked in my process. And also, these steps laid out very simply, when implemented and executed, would totally, I would say, not totally negate, but would minimize or eliminate a lot of the no-shows. So when I'm going to show this part of the segment to my client that messaged me earlier today that I talked about, 5 meetings booked and only 1 show, and he's trying to figure out why, really quickly when he goes through what I'm going to go through right here, it's all going to make sense. So again, Step one doesn't change. Any of the steps that don't really change, I'm not going to spend much time on. We still got to get engagement, whatever method that is you're using or you're trying to get good at. Stick with it and get that down and consistent until before you start adding in multiple. That would be my recommendation. Again, if you have more foundations and bandwidth and money, sure, you can add in a second avenue before you have one mastered. It's just not a high, it's just not a big recommendation. So number two, I don't know which of these three that I've implemented, number two, four, and five, that weren't in the usual or old process, is the most impactful, but I tend to think it's number two. Now, they all have a certain percentage of effectiveness that they're going to ultimately make a difference in the metrics I keep talking about, right? Close rate, show rate, all that stuff. But assigning a new frame is really just saying when we create engagement, and let's just say we point out a big pain point in the market. Hey, are you struggling to get out of Zoom calls and off your calendar, and you're just balls to the wall all day, right, nonstop, but you're struggling with personal time, downtime, the ability to go do all your admin work because you're so busy on calls you lose track, right? Maybe that's a pain point for a certain offer, whatever. So once they kind of relate to that and click and like raise their hand, whatever that is on an ad, if they raise their hand and click more information because that initial message engagement aligned with them, we would then send them to step two, to a booking page, before they would get to number three, which again is where I recommend the triage call. And that's where I assign the new frame. And what I show them is, hey, you probably clicked on this ad because you're buried nonstop 8 to 9 hours a day on Zoom calls, having trouble having downtime, personal time, and getting to all your admin tasks. And you probably think the problem is you're not efficient or effective enough. And then we reframe them and say, well, what if I told you that's not the real problem? This is actually the real problem. And then we inject the real problem. The real problem is you haven't mastered efficiency by using AI and common technology, which can actually give you back on average 2 to 4 hours per day. Let us show you an AI system that can get your time back, make sure all your admin tasks are caught up on, and you're still clocking out before you are now. Would that be helpful, right? So I'm just assigning a new frame there saying, hey, this is what you thought was the real problem. This is actually the real problem, and here's the solution. If this would help you, click the button and go book a call, right? So now they're like, when we assign a new frame and we do that properly, you guys have heard me say this over and over again if you've been on multiple workshops or watched my training, but what their brain does in the psychology in any human being is, hey, what Ray said totally makes sense. Nobody's really said that before. How do I find out more? And then they click the call to action there, right? That's the how do I find out more? They're going to click it. So the call to action then takes them to what I like to use in almost all the businesses. Again, there's outliers where I automate this, but let's just go with the majority and what I recommend in the DaaS process, a triage call. Now, the triage call, I've already shown you on the seller's document that I dropped in the chat earlier. Number 4 on here is the triage call framework already built out for you. So you can go back and look at that. But when you go through that framework, you're going to see there's 2 primary objectives of a triage call. I'd love to take the time, and I probably don't have enough people that are active and engaging to ask you guys if you know what those are. So I'll just dive right into them. But the 2 main aspects of a triage call, the 2 main objectives, I should say, there's more than 2 aspects. 2 main objectives is number 1, making sure that they're a good fit for your offer, meaning a few things. Number 1, they suffer from the problem that your offer or solution or product or service solves. Number 2, this is a priority to get solved yesterday rather than 6 months from now. And number 3, which kind of tags into the second part of the objective, are they willing to make a financial commitment, right, to better their business? So that's what I call the soft yes, and you'll see it in the triage framework. When I'm rounding out the call, once I've identified, the first part has to be true before I even get to like the financial pre-qualification and the soft yes, meaning that they suffer from a problem my stuff solves, they're willing to make an investment and they want this problem solved. Once all that stuff has been identified, solidified, confirmed, however you want to phrase it, before I get off the call, right, my goal is, and I'll go through the whole process and then tie in number 4, 5, and 6. But let's say I've done all that and I've assessed the situation and I know they're a good fit. So what I'm going to do is say next, hey, Bob, this is what I recommend based off this call. Now, number 1, I'm going to send you over a short little 5-minute video that talks totally about our process and system and solution and what actually intrigued you to hop on the call and you clicked on our ad initially. So the ad kind of intrigued you, you told me, but you haven't actually seen our process. So let me send you over a little 5-minute video giving you an overview of that process. Secondly, and in addition to that, because we only had 15 minutes here today, and I really want to dive into that more and show you how that would work for your business, let's book a second call once you've had a chance to go through that homework And what I'm going to do at that call is I'm going to demo everything for you and answer any questions. So by, giving me another half hour, 30 minutes, hopping back on with me and going through this 5-minute video, you should have some more questions and some more, really vision on how you want to use this. And if it's a good fit for you, I'd love you to come educated to that call with some questions to ask me so we can really build out the right game plan and blueprint for your business. Right. So, and then once they confirm all that, yeah, right, I'm open to another call. I'll go through the video, yada, yada, yada. All right, great. So, John, barring when we speak, and let's just say today's Tuesday, we set that call for Thursday, 4 p.m. Hey, John, when we speak Thursday at 4 p.m., barring everything makes sense and you see a clear path to help solve this problem and really have a positive ROI in your business from this, is there anything that would prevent you from investing to further your business on that call Thursday at 4 p.m.? Right. And then I just sit back and shut up. And why did I word it that way? Why did I say, is there anything that would prevent you or would there anything stop you from investing? Because I want him to really think about it. The other phrasing, and I still see this in the majority of scripts and funnels, is, hey, John, if everything makes sense on your call Thursday at 4, would you be willing to move forward and invest? And most people don't really think and they just nod their head or say yes. But I want them to think, because what I'm trying to do when I ask, is there anything that would prevent us from moving forward on that call, is I want to suss out objections now on the triage call that I don't want to have to overcome on the sales call, or that doesn't make it push it to a third call. Meaning, if I don't ask that now, we might get on the sales call. Everything might be great when we get to step 6 and we get into the close and he's like, oh, I have a business partner. I don't move forward without my spouse. Like all things I could have found out earlier and made sure the spouse or the business partner was on this call if I asked that question properly. So number one, it's sussing out objections. Number two, it's getting them to commit to, if they see a clear path to solution, result, outcome, whatever that is, they are willing to invest to solve that problem, to get that outcome, right? So the only one I kind of didn't cover in here, because I did that in the process of I'm the setter and I'm the closer and I'm a one-man sales team. When that comes into play, I wouldn't really use number 5. Number 5, the alignment phase, I just want to describe to you. We use internally, and I use in a lot of sales teams where there is multiple reps. There's a setter department and then a closer, or maybe somebody does the triage call for you and then you, the business owner, actually takes the sales call. But whenever there's a second person and it's going to be somebody else, when I'm wrapping up the triage call and going over the homework, I would go into the alignment phase and I would add this, and you guys will see this in the script or the framework. Now, if you're a one-man show, I probably would omit this. You don't need it. It's actually unnecessary, right? Not needed. So I'm saying the same thing over and over again. But what this looks like is when I'm wrapping up that call and booking them into the second call, I'm going to say, so John, you're going to meet with my closer and my industry expert. I wouldn't use the word closer, but I would use, you're going to meet with my, my sales advisor, Mark, Thursday at 4 p.m. as you agreed. Let's just double check your calendar. I just sent you the invite. Can you just make sure to go accept it right now? Because what happens on my sales team's calendar, if they see appointments, my admin that aren't approved and you're not saying you're attending, it might get deleted off the board so we can make room for other people. So please make sure you go accept. I don't want to see your appointment get deleted by my admin. Once you've accepted that, oh, great, John, you just accepted. Awesome. Now, what I'm going to do is, because you haven't met Mark yet, and so you don't have to rehash all the information, I'm going to do a quick little introduction. And again, depending on the platform, right? I have a lot of my clients that are on Facebook. I might do it there. Might just be an email introduction, whatever you are using, right? But I'm going to do a little 3-way introduction where I'm going to recap what we talked about and give Mark a little overview. And then I'm going to introduce you to him and make sure you guys already have an open line of communication. That way, John, in case one of you guys is on a previous call Thursday at 4, your call's running a few minutes over, God forbid an emergency comes up, at least you guys already have an open chain of communication where you can coordinate if somebody's going to be late or you need to reschedule. Would that be beneficial to you? And when you do this, guys, and then you do it in application, and I have some great screenshots of the ones that I do, so you can see a format for them. If anybody has a multiple person sales team where you're not doing this all yourself, happy to show you some of the screenshots and examples that I have of those. But the client or the prospect, these are ways that we stand out in what I call the prospect journey, right? We always hear about as business owners, like focusing on the client journey, the customer experience. And I'm not saying don't, I certainly do, but I also put that same emphasis into my prospect journey in the sales process so we can stand out. If you go listen to some of those call recordings that I put in that number 8 on the seller resources doc, you're going to hear people at the end of the call saying, wait, this call was way different than any I've been on. Dude, this was the best sales call I've ever jumped on. Like, people can feel that. And I don't ask for that feedback most of the time. Sometimes I ask them, hey, what are your thoughts on the calls or anything I could have done better? And they'll be like, no, this was great. This was way better than the other 3 calls I was on, because my focus on how I build this out, from everything from the resources, assigning the new frame, the homework, the triage call, the scripts, the frameworks, it all helps us stand out in the marketplace. But when we do this alignment phase, and then you get to the closer call, or sometimes even before then in the alignment phase, when I do that 3-way introduction, the prospect will come back saying, Ray, you recapped everything so great. I'm glad we don't have to rehash all that. And now me and Mark can just really hit the ground running. Thank you for listening. So they feel like you are in alignment with their goals, and you've passed that message on to the next person they're going to be speaking with. Whereas most sales processes, a lot of them nowadays, and not even all of them, might do number 4. They might send some homework, but they very rarely do a recap and a personal introduction to the next person in the process. Meaning, when they get on that next call, and I've heard this over and over again from people who've been through sales processes, through sales calls, man, I feel like I do one call to this company, then I get on with a different guy. We have the same damn conversation, and he asks me the same 7 questions over and over again. And it's kind of frustrating. You know what I mean? So, like, we can avoid that by recapping the conversation, assuring the prospect that we listened to them. Not only did we listen, we transferred all that information over to the next person. So they're already in alignment, on the same page, don't have to rehash that conversation, and can just hit the ground running. Now, when you do all this stuff properly and you confirm that the prospect did go through number 4 and watch the 5-minute video or the homework you sent over, the closer can really start the call with, hey, John, Ray sent me over a little recap after you guys spoke on Tuesday. Looking forward to talking to you here today. He had told me he sent you over a video showing you more about our process, and more specifically how that would kind of morph into your business and what you're trying to accomplish. Did you get a chance to go through that video? Yeah, Mark, I did. Great. So let me ask you, what was your biggest takeaway? And give me your just overall thoughts and feedback. Well, my biggest takeaway is that process seems like exactly like what I need. Yada. So they start off the call basically selling themselves on your services. I mean, all of you that have run sales calls, how many times do you get on a call, break the ice with a prospect, ask them one question, and they're already telling you what they like about your solution, your process, your product? In very few businesses, it's set up to have their process aligned in that manner. So it really accomplishes that goal. But it's so much easier, and almost like a lot of the selling is done before they even get on the call, right? And then the closer really just has to make alignment, make sure that we show them the clear path, and really make sure that the finances line up, and get them to make a decision to move forward. But when they show up to the call kind of saying, man, I love that process. That's something I've never seen before. Oh my God, I could use that. Oh my God, where's that been all my life? Like, when they start the call like that, they're kind of already eating out of your hands to an extent as a sales professional. So, excuse me, that's a quick little overview of the process. Now, going a little further and just showing you this, again, I kind of covered this, but the biggest mistake people make in a sales is they think one call does all the work. That can happen sometimes, but it's highly unlikely, right? Unlocking a high close rate and consistent process is all about leveraging those micro commitments. So as we're going through those steps, they're getting a little more and more sold from when they first saw your ad. Then they saw your video where you reframe them, and they're like, oh shit, that makes sense. Then they had a triage call where it all aligned and they see a clear solution. Then they watched a homework video specific to their problem and what they're struggling with, and showing them a solution. Then they get a message aligning them with the rep they're going to be speaking with, and then they get on that call, right? So I would say personally, a lot of the heavy lifting is done before they even show up to that sales call. Whereas many businesses are leaving it all to come on that sales call and putting all the weight on the closer. Not saying guys can't do that and it's not possible, but it's not best practice in my opinion. So as we like to say, about 4 of the buying signals happen before the call. You cannot really rely on one call to do all the heavy lifting. About 75 to 80% is in the pre-frame and the 4 steps that happen prior to that. So again, I went through all these: the engagement, the new frame, call to action, homework, alignment, the close. But let's go back and now show you how you can look at this process when I'm getting certain things, and kind of put it back to one aspect of the sales process, which is very, very difficult when I showed you the kind of usual or old method where they're just using 3 steps, right? So, like, let's say we're getting constant rejections, or I'll think about it. Well, now we got to think, if they're thinking about it when they get to the sales call, did we really do a good job assigning the new frame, and are they really bought in? My guess is no, they're probably not bought in. So I need to go back and look at my video or my research or my pain point or what I'm doing, and maybe I need to test a different frame or a different angle or knowledge gap. There's a lot of different words we can use there. But the question I'm asking myself is, does your frame about the real problem resonate or even make sense to for them to try to find a solution? A lot of times the answer is no. They're going to go through the process still because people do that. But then when you get to the end, they're going to be like, everything sounds great, Mark. I just need to think about it. And we probably could have done better assigning a new frame. It could be this one. We could be getting oops, sorry, we could be getting constant no-shows. What I found is that highly correlates back to number 4 the most, meaning let's say we have this 2-call process. And again, I think this is irrelevant of if you're doing this yourself or you have, a setter and a closer. But let's say we spoke on Tuesday. I set you for the next call with Mark Thursday at 4 p.m. I send you the invite, you accept. Then there's crickets between now and then. You don't receive any resources. You don't receive any follow-ups, any touch point messages, no alignment introducing you to the next rep and recapping what you did. If all those steps get skipped, they clicked on your ad, they booked a call, they showed up for 15 minutes, they said they'd be open to the full 30, 45 minute, 60-minute sales call. But then in between Tuesday, when you speak to them, and Thursday at 4, there's no communication, no resources, no further alignment. That steadily increases no-show rates and decreases show-up rates. And usually it's, again, I don't think the alignment is near as important because not every system needs this. And that's just going a step above and beyond. I think the homework is the big indicator here. And that means we either didn't provide homework or we provided a very vague generic homework that they didn't really get a lot of value or align with. So how I kind of created these is initially I had kind of 2, I would say, standard homeworks. And that's before I had a big team and had the time to go record stuff for everybody or had team members that could. I just kind of had one for prospect A and prospect B, meaning my low sophistication kind of entry level consumer or prospect, and then my more established, more high sophistication, more established business. Because the way I talk to a newcomer doing under 10K a month and a business owner doing 50K plus or 100K plus, it's night and day. If I send that guy the same resource, one of them is going to be like, oh, I'll never hit 50 or 100K months because I haven't even snapped 10K. Why is he talking to me about this? Or the other guy, if he sees my video saying, hey, what if I can help you make your first 10K month? And he's already at 50 or 100K months, he's going to look at that and like just turn it off right off the bat and say, this guy, I hit 10K months freaking 4 years ago. How's this guy going to help me, right? So initially, I kind of had one for each of those. What I started to do as I grow and as I kind of like to customize these more and more. So I actually did this earlier today, right before this call. I had a sales call with a woman. She asked me for a recap and to go through some more stuff, and she didn't have the time to do it on the call. So instead of using one of my pre-existing recordings on that, I went and made her a custom one, added her name in there, added her own company. I did some research on her company and showed her that. And then I made everything applicable to our conversation. So I know that might seem a little time consuming. This one for me was time consuming. And you know how long it took me? 13 minutes. That was for me to create what I would consider a time consuming resource. Usually these take me about 5 to 7 minutes. So if I can't spare 5 to 7 or up to 13 minutes to really stand out and wow somebody, maybe I got to reflect at myself and where my time is best spent. So I'm saying this to say you can have some standard homeworks that might be a great fit for your offer if you always know your kind of your client avatar, your ideal client, and they're kind of all similar. Sure, you can have generic ones. I think the more we can customize the homework they receive to the specific conversation they just had an hour before or the day before, whenever you're sending it, it's gonna really make a much bigger difference. And again, if they receive no homework, no video showing them the process, no communication, no alignment, no touch point messaging, your show rates between step 3 and step 6 totally drop off, and you're going to see a high rate of no shows. So I know in most processes, we either aren't sending homework, we have an ineffective homework, or we're just going very, very generic and not customizing them. And I can make that adjustment. You might just get a simple, I get to the end and everything sounds great, Mark, but I'm going to pass on this opportunity. That either means that could go back to 2 or 5 in this case. I've actually done a lot of research on this. It could go back to not assigning the frame, similar to the one where it's like, I need to think about it, right? All pass can be similar. Sometimes all pass is just a simple brush off objection from them not feeling like they stood out or they mattered in your process. I think when I get them from more that perspective of like, hey, they didn't really value me, they didn't do anything to wow me, and they didn't really stand out. I think I could have done a better job or done some in the alignment phase that might have made them feel stronger, and they wouldn't just give me an all pass. So this is one of the few. And it's so vague, right? When they just say all pass. I just took a very generic example because we've all heard it before. But this one can come back to one of two areas. I would go back and look at both areas. If everything looks good, I'm getting to the end of a sales call and I'm just hearing, hey, I'm going to pass on this, Mark. I'm going to pass, Ray. The opportunity is right for me, but I'm just going to pass, right? If I'm getting that, I would go back and look at those two steps. You might just get no response right from the jump. So maybe maybe they initially see your engagement, and if I'm getting a lot of people to see my engagement, meaning I'm blasting out emails, I know people are seeing my ad, but I'm not actually getting anybody to see the new frame or to a triage call booking or to go view my VSL. We really got to go look back at step one. What message and what angle are we using to engage? And we need to split test and try some other ones. So a lot of people put a lot of stuff out there. And again, this goes back to all the methods I mentioned, whether I'm doing organic outreach, whether I'm doing ads, whether I'm doing email, whether I'm creating partnerships. If I don't have the right message in the beginning to actually create that engagement, they're never going to go any further in the process. So sometimes it's just like, hey, Ray, I'm blasting out emails, I'm running ads, I'm doing social media posts, but I'm not actually even getting calls booked. I would say the problem is with your initial message and what you're using. Maybe it's just static and boring. Maybe you're using like long form, static text when you can create that into a much more upbeat video, and that might make all the difference. Sometimes it's not even your message. Sometimes it's just like the media channel or avenue we're using. Sometimes I'm trying to connect with a younger crowd, but I'm using older methods like blogs or like things where they have to go read. The younger crowd, generally speaking, again, there's always going to be outliers to anything, but generally speaking, they're not doing a lot of reading. They're watching a lot of short form video content. So I need to go make my engagement more short form video content to connect with that younger crowd. Maybe if I'm going after a 50 and older crowd, I might want them to be more reading materials, more long form copy, or more blog posts. Because if I do some research, I found out that the older crowd is actually still into reading more than the short form video content. So, again, there's a lot of things that go into play there, and I'm just kind of breaking down all the aspects. So, just to rehash today's lesson, one big sale is made up of 6 small compounding micro commitment components that ultimately do a lot of the heavy lifting for you and your team. So that's what I wanted to cover. That's a pretty thorough lesson on it. I'm going to go back and see if we have, okay, there's a few more comments in here. Can you share the link with us so we can have you? Are you talking about a copy of that actual slide pitch deck, John? Is he still on here? Yes. John, if you could unmute for 1 second, your question there when you said share the link so we can have a copy, were you talking about that pitch deck I just went through? Can you leave the link to those docs in the presentation in the chat? Yeah, I've joined a few. We already decided. So, okay, so somebody reshared the link to the document. Jaron, were you also talking about the slides? Can you unmute and just answer or type in the chat, one of the two?
Yes, I was talking about the slides, and I think you sent me the other document, the 10 items to get started. I think you sent that as well.
Correct.
I
Yeah,
just
that's in the email I sent you, the 9. The docs is actually from a previous business before I even launched Audience Lab. I'm sorry, the slides. Happy to share it with any of my clients, though. So, yes, I will. What I'll do, rather than people just asking, you guys might know, and just to rehash for anybody that's new, every Tuesday I run these. I go post a replay later in the day. So, I know a lot of people can't join this. They miss it. Some people want to watch it back. So, let me just share with you real quick. I post the replay, and right where I post that in the same channel, I'll go post the link to all these slides so anybody can have access to them. But let me just screen share and show you where that will be so everybody can find them. Bring up the right browser, because as any entrepreneur, if I'm not rocking out of multiple browsers, I'm probably not busy. So when you go into school, you're going to see down in the all section, you're going to see a few different tabs. All of my posts regarding stuff from these workshops, my recording, they all go into the sales channel. So when you go in here, click on sales. Later today, I will have the link to this slide deck so you guys can go back through all those. I'll warn you guys, it's a very lengthy deck. This came from our first flagship program we ever launched before Audience Lab was even a thought in any of our heads. My initial company and brand, if some of you guys may know, I'm sure some of you guys don't, it's called PDOCS. Stands for pains, desires, obstacles, common beliefs, and steroids. PDOCS is an overall communication system kind of wrapped into a very streamlined SOP and methodology in every component of that. So I'm not going to get too in depth, but point being, that slide deck is like 900 slides deep. So It might be a little overwhelming, but I'm going to be happy to share it with all you guys. And just so you guys know that are on this call, the slides I went through today were like number 51 through 60 approximately. You'll find them right in there. But it might get a little complex. And just so everybody's aware, again, happy to share, but those don't all directly correlate to Audience Lab. Some of that stuff was from programs and companies before Audience Lab. Some of the stuff certainly correlates, and I still teach it here often, such as today's micro commitment sales process. 100% correlates to what we do at Audience Lab and how we built our sales team. So later today, in this sales channel, I have about 2 more calls after I finish this workshop. After that, I'm going to upload a post with the link to all these slides for all you guys, as well as once the recording is uploaded, I will have today's replay. And if you go back through that sales channel, every 7 days, you're going to see me posting a DaaS sales, weekly recording, workshop recording, because I run them every Tuesday. So if you want to check out any past ones or whatever, they're all in that channel. But specifically today's resources and what you guys asked for, I will drop in there later this afternoon within the next couple hours. So yes, you guys can have all those slides. I warn you, don't get overwhelmed by them though. Just pay attention to what's applicable, or else you might get lost in there. Cool. So can you leave the links? Yep, that was that last question. I don't see any further questions. All right, guys. I mean, there's about 10 minutes left, but if I don't have any other questions specifically, I'm definitely not going to dive into a whole nother lesson topic, because there's no way I can get any of those in 10 minutes or less. I can't do it and be thorough, right? So appreciate it, Eddie. You're going to see some more of that tomorrow morning in a one-on-one capacity. So John, as we talked about, I'll be sending you all the information to book with me and the resources you should have received. And then to everybody else that asked a little later today, a post with all these slides that you can have access to. And today's call recording will all be uploaded into school. So I appreciate you guys joining. Some interaction. Thank you both, John and Dron, for unmuting and chiming in and asking a couple questions or answering a couple. And look forward to seeing all you guys soon. Thanks for your time today.